This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Turkey for peace talks with his Russian counterpart, but Vladimir Putin won't be there. He has sent a delegation of lower-level officials to Istanbul instead. Zelensky is calling them stand-in props. He says this is Putin's war and only Putin can end it. As Crystal Gomansing reports, many European leaders agree.
The ball is now clearly in Russia's court.
NATO chief Mark Rutte says there should be no doubt anymore. Ukraine is ready to negotiate, and it is Russia that must take the next step. Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson says Vladimir Putin was the one who initiated direct talks, adding the Russian delegation in Istanbul is ready for serious work.
It's not a serious delegation.
Alex Younger is the former head of the British intelligence agency MI6.
Head of delegation is a former culture minister and amateur historian.
Vladimir Medinsky is a Kremlin aide. He's heading up the Russian delegation. He was involved in talks in 2022, which failed. The two leaders have not met face-to-face in 6 years.
Whatever the process is.
Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State who is in Turkey for a NATO foreign ministers meeting, says there is no military solution to the conflict.
And the sooner an agreement can be reached on ending this war, less people will die.
Ukrainians have endured 3 years of Russian bombardments as Russian forces fight to seize more Ukrainian territory. Neither country releases information on battlefield casualties, but estimates are in the hundreds of thousands. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
Hospital officials in Gaza say more than 60 people have been killed by Israeli overnight airstrikes. Injured children are treated at an overcrowded hospital in Khan Yunis. The city was hit by at least 9 separate strikes. Trent Murray is following developments from Tel Aviv. And Trent, what more can you tell us about these latest attacks?
Well, there have been a number of airstrikes in Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza, close to the European hospital where strikes happened earlier in the week. It is being reported that a lot of those strikes in Khan Yunis are trying to prevent rescuers getting to the site of the European hospital. But we are also tracking several strikes around Gaza City where evacuation orders were issued overnight by the IDF, some of the largest that we have seen around Gaza City, an area where 3 schools were located as well as a hospital. Those are areas where civilians were sheltering, seemingly because it was safe. But based on what we're hearing now, those people are being evacuated out as the IDF embarks on what it says is an intense airstrikes program in order to try and target Hamas infrastructure. We're, of course, witnessing the scenes on the ground where civilians have been caught in the crossfire. Health facilities there are struggling to treat the injured. And of course, those health facilities are now being also targeted, it seems. Certainly the European hospital seems to be a site of continued attacks, which we are tracking based on the IDF saying that underground Hamas bunkers were under the hospital.
All right. Thank you so much, Trent.
Thank you.
Reporter Trent Murray in Tel Aviv. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government says it is taking immediate action to improve the lives of Canadians, but a federal budget is not coming anytime soon. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne says there will just be an update this year, a fall economic statement. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, Liberals were elected on a platform full of budgetary promises. What is going on here?
Marcia, it was clear from the photo op that they organized after Cabinet yesterday that Mark Carney's government intended the day's headline to be its follow-through on a campaign pledge to drop the income tax payable on Canadians' first $57,000 of income from 15% to 14%. But without including this as part of a larger federal budget, the House of Commons is going to be asked to approve it without any clarity on how this fits into the government's bigger fiscal plan. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne was out defending this as a consequence of the spring's tight schedule.
Timing issue in the sense that first you need to Parliament is going to come back. We're going to table legislation to enable the tax cut, which is really what Canadians I would say that's the first order of priority.
The spring's campaign, though, set an expectation that a government led by a former central banker and a governing caucus that includes MPs with impressive financial credentials would be making transformative changes to how the government does business. Without a budget, there's no line of sight, no oversight on that. Champagne says he will have an economic update, but not until the fall. Former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page finds that unsustainable and unacceptable.
The bond rating agencies, they're not going to like the fact that the government is not producing this type of financial document.
Pierre Poilievre was scathing in a social media post yesterday, saying Mark Carney had campaigned on the slogan of plan beats no plan. And now he's confirming that, in fact, he has no plan by not tabling a budget, an abandonment of the leadership the Prime Minister had promised.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. The trade war with the U.S. is expected to dominate Ontario's budget. The provincial government is tabling it today. As Jamie Strachan reports, this is the first one since Premier Doug Ford and his Progressive Conservatives won re-election in February.
Let's not rely on President Trump any longer. Let's start creating.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says reducing reliance on American trade and becoming more self-reliant will be priorities in today's budget.
In the face of President Trump's tariffs, which are rising the cost of everyday essentials, we need to do even more.
There's been a flurry of pre-budget spending already. Billions of dollars to speed up housing growth, retrain workers, and reduce tolls. Also a plan to defer billions in taxes. Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethenfalsey.
That is what the budget I will be presenting is going to be about. Boosting our economic prosperity, thinking big and bold, and championing nation-building projects.
All of this will come at a cost. Ontario's relatively small $1.5 billion deficit could swell and shelve plans to balance the books by next year, says the province's former chief economist, Brian Lewis.
We are seeing slower economic growth and a potential recession arising from the trade war instigated by the American president, so that's going to affect government revenue projections.
Beyond Trump, Lewis says healthcare is a priority, things like addressing hospital wait times, also much-needed money for the province's universities and colleges.
We're going to start to see some real pressures in our provincial post-secondary education sector, and I think that's a problem because that is going to affect our ability to educate and train and attract the best and the brightest.
Another item many will be looking for, more details on a plan to build a tunnel under the 401, Canada's busiest highway. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
New Zealand's parliament is temporarily suspending 3 Maori MPs. It is believed to be the harshest ever penalty issued to parliamentarians in that country. The trio are being reprimanded for performing the haka in parliament. The ceremonial dance is often seen on sports fields before games in New Zealand. But as Georgie Smythe explains, these MPs used it to protest a government bill.
In New Zealand's parliament, a member of the Te Pari Māori Party begins performing the traditional haka song and dance while tearing up a draft bill that sought to reinterpret New Zealand's founding document, the Treaty of Waitangi. This happened in November, but a 21 and 7-day ban for the 3 participants has just been handed down. Judith Collins, the head of the committee that recommended the punishment, says the decisions were not made lightly.
We've never seen action like this in Parliament.
It's a stricter ruling than I think a lot of people expected outside of the party.
Fox Meyer is a political reporter with the media organisation Newsroom in Wellington. He says the suspensions are the longest in parliamentary history.
It was the setting itself that was what the Privileges Committee saw as the problem. It was the advancing across the floor of the House, the pointing and gesturing at another party in the middle of a debate.
The bill the group was protesting, which sought to change the rights of Māori and non-Māori in the country, was eventually defeated, but not before sparking massive protests across New Zealand. The decision of whether to carry out the temporary suspension of the Māori Party members will be voted on next week. And like the defeated bill, the fallout from this debate around Indigenous issues might last longer than any suspensions. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. And if you like the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.